I was wrapping up the weekly logistics report when a message popped onto my phone. Need to see you in the conference room. That was it. No greeting. No explanation. Just that one line from Derek Ellison, our general manager. I stared at it for a moment. After nearly 2 decades at Broadline Supply's main distribution center in Fort Worth, I got my fair share of texts. But something about this one felt different, like the kind of silence that creeps in just before a storm hits West Texas. The kind that tells you something's coming. My name is Daniel Cortez, and I'm 52 years old. I started working at Broadline when my youngest was just learning how to ride a bike. Back then, I was clocking in as a forklift operator. No college degree, just grit, work ethic, and a need to put food on the table. Over the years, I worked my way up, floor supervisor, inventory control, then eventually senior operations lead. I didn't get here by playing office politics. I got here by fixing what was broken. I streamlined our shipping processes, built training programs that cut turnover in half, and reduced inventory shrinkage by more than 20% across 3 consecutive quarters. I knew this place better than the back of my own hand. And I wasn't just part of the system, I was a backbone. So when Derek called me in with that vague little message, I already had a pit in my stomach before I even stood up. Still, I walked to that room with my head high. I passed by Miguel in receiving, who was coaching a new guy on how to properly load the pallets. Miguel gave me a quick thumbs up. I returned the gesture and kept walking. That man had been thriving under the protocols we'd introduced just 3 months ago. The conference room door was shut. That was the first red flag. We usually ran an open-door policy at this facility, something I had championed personally. So I knocked once, then entered. Derek was standing by the window with his arms crossed. His shirt was freshly ironed, his hair a little too perfect, like he was trying to look like a man in control. At the table sat Kelsey Briggs from HR. A manila folder was placed neatly in front of her, and her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I sat without being asked, folded my hands, and waited. Derek turned with the kind of expression that said he was trying hard to be neutral, but he'd already made up his mind. "Daniel," he said, "after careful consideration, we've concluded that your role no longer fits the company's evolving strategy." He didn't wait for a response. "Frankly," he added, "your compensation level has become difficult to justify." I blinked. Just once. I'd had performance reviews that were nothing short of glowing. I had quarterly reports that backed every decision I made. I had saved this facility more money than Derek had even been here long enough to understand. But none of that mattered now. Kelsey slid the folder toward me. "Your severance package is outlined here," she said. "IT has already deactivated your access." Just like that. 17 years of service boiled down to 3 sentences and a printout. I looked at Derek. He couldn't meet my eyes. His fingers were twitching slightly, tapping his forearm like he wanted this over as fast as possible. And in that moment, I felt calm, because Derek didn't know the full picture. He didn't know about the meeting I had 2 weeks ago at corporate headquarters in Houston. He didn't know I'd been invited by Elaine Watterson, Broadline's vice president of operations, to talk about something long-term. He had no clue that they'd been watching my work. No clue they were preparing to offer me a promotion that would change the trajectory of my life. And his. I picked up the pen, signed the document, and stood. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said. Derek looked relieved, like he'd expected a scene and didn't get one. He had no idea that Monday morning would be something else entirely. I walked out of the Broadline Fort Worth facility, feeling oddly free. There was no bitterness in my chest, no anger in my steps. Just a strange, steady pulse in my veins that whispered, "He has no idea." That night, I drove home, sat on my back porch with a cold glass of iced tea, and watched the sky burn orange over the Texas plains. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. It was a call from Elaine Watterson. "Daniel," she said warmly, "just wanted you to know, we're sending out the official company-wide announcement tomorrow at noon." I leaned back in my chair. I imagine it'll cause a few raised eyebrows. She laughed. "More than a few. I'd be lying if I said we weren't anticipating some dramatic reactions, especially in Fort Worth." "You told Derek yet?" "No, that's not our job anymore. The announcement will speak for itself." And speak it did. Friday, 12:04 p.m. The email went out to every Broadline Supply employee from Dallas to San Antonio to El Paso. Subject: Leadership Announcement. Daniel Cortez appointed Regional Director, South Texas Division. The body read: Broadline Supply is proud to announce the promotion of Daniel Cortez to Regional Director, South Texas Division. With over 17 years of exemplary service, Daniel has demonstrated outstanding leadership, innovation, and integrity. He will now oversee operations across 15 regional facilities, including our flagship location in Fort Worth. 15 facilities, and Derek's was now one of them. Within minutes, my phone started lighting up like a 4th of July skyline. Miguel, wait, you're the new regional? Bro, Justice. Teresa from inventory. Everyone's in shock. Derek locked himself in his office. Kelsey Briggs, even she messaged me privately. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. He blindsided all of us. I responded kindly. I wasn't about to take cheap shots. That wasn't my game. But quietly, it felt good. Not because Derek was panicking, but because the people I had mentored, coached, and fought for were finally seeing the system work in their favor. That evening, my daughter Natalie came over for dinner. She had brought tacos like she always did when she sensed something big was happening in my life. So, Derek fired you. Yep. And now you his boss. I nodded. She burst out laughing. Dad, that's the most beautiful kind of karma I've ever seen. I smiled but stayed quiet. I wasn't celebrating the downfall of a man. I was preparing for the rebuilding of a culture. You're going to do amazing, she said, handing me a bottle of Topo Chico. Promise me you'll walk in there on Monday with your head held high. Don't worry, I said. I've got just the blazer for the job. That weekend, I made the drive to Houston. The corporate apartment was modern, small but clean. It sat on the 12th floor of a glass high-rise with a view of the skyline and the bayou far in the distance. I unpacked a few essentials, then walked downtown to pick up new work attire. For 17 years, I wore khakis and steel-toed boots. Now, I needed to look like I belonged in a boardroom. At a boutique off Main Street, a sales associate named Andrea helped me find exactly what I didn't know I was looking for. Deep navy blazers, crisp button-downs, tailored charcoal slacks, real leather shoes. She adjusted my collar and stepped back. You look like a man who's about to make decisions that matter. I looked in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself, not in a bad way, just different. This was the version of me that had always been there. It had just been buried under late shifts, busted forklifts, and an invisible weight of being just the operations guy. Now, he was gone. Now, I was the director. Monday morning arrived with a gray fog draped across Houston's skyline. It was the kind of morning that felt heavy with meaning. I took my time getting ready, not because I was stalling, but because I was preparing. This wasn't just another day at work. This was the day I walked into Broadline Fort Worth, not as Danny from Ops, but as Regional Director Daniel Cortez. I buttoned the deep navy blazer, straightened the light blue shirt underneath, and slid the leather binder into my portfolio case. No clipboard today, no walkie, no utility belt, just quiet authority and years of unspoken truth backing my every step. I drove north up I-45, watching the city thin out into rolling highway until the old landmarks of Fort Worth began to rise on the horizon. I arrived 10 minutes early. Old habit, but I didn't park in my usual spot near the loading dock. I pulled into the visitor executive section out front. I wanted them to feel the shift, not in arrogance, but in tone. As I stepped out of the car, I saw them. Familiar faces through the windows, some confused, some wide-eyed, others clearly smiling behind their nerves. Miguel was by the front entrance. He looked me up and down, eyes widening. Mr. Cortez, you look like you run the whole damn state. I chuckled. Just the southern third of it. He held the door open. It's been a wild weekend, sir. Derek's been pacing like a storm's about to hit. I nodded. Tell him the storm just parked. I walked through those familiar corridors with a strange calm. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The people I passed paused in their tracks. Some offered silent nods of respect. Others gave quiet thumbs up. I returned them all, steady and composed. The conference room was just ahead. Through the glass, I could see Derek sitting at the table surrounded by color-coded spreadsheets and binders, his tie slightly askew. He kept checking his watch, tapping his pen, shifting in his seat like a man waiting for the verdict. I paused at the door. One deep breath, not to calm myself, but to remember who I was walking in for. Not for revenge, but for the people who gave this place its soul. I opened the door. "Good morning, Derek," I said, cool and clear. He stood so fast he knocked over his chair. Regional Director Cortez. I extended my hand. "Let's begin." Derek launched into a PowerPoint presentation like his life depended on it. Charts, performance graphs, labor reports, all crafted to spin his version of the truth. "Under my leadership," he said, "we've seen a 12% reduction in average delivery time." He flipped to a slide about inventory shrinkage, proudly announcing that the system implemented last year had cut loss by 18%. I nearly laughed. That system? I built it. That training program? I drafted it. And yet he spoke about it like it was his brainchild. I let him finish. I let him bask in it. And then I opened my leather portfolio. "Thank you, Derek," I said, flipping to my own set of documents. "Now let's talk about the termination of a senior staff member with 17 years of documented success, executed without proper procedure or corporate consultation." His face drained of color. I slid the first report across the table. "Turnover rate at this facility has spiked 38% since last fiscal year." Another. "Customer satisfaction has declined by 19%. That's a first in 8 years." Another. "Shrinkage is quietly creeping back up, month over month." Care to explain? He opened his mouth, but said nothing. I leaned forward. Calm. Measured. "This company doesn't just measure output, Derek. We measure impact. And impact isn't built on numbers alone. It's built on people." He tried to regain composure. "We've been restructuring." I didn't flinch. Restructuring shouldn't feel like purging. I closed the folder. "You have 2 choices. 1, submit your resignation effective today and accept standard severance. Or 2, begin a 60-day improvement plan under my direct supervision. Weekly reporting, measurable targets, and full team feedback." He looked stunned, like he was just now realizing the game had changed. I'd like the chance to improve," he said finally. I nodded. "Then let's get to work. Because the team you tore apart, we're going to rebuild it. And you're going to help me do it. If there's one thing I've learned after nearly 2 decades in operations, it's this. You don't fix a broken system with a speech. You fix it by showing up. Over and over. Until people believe again." So that's what I did. While Derek spent his mornings nervously preparing his weekly reports, I walked the floor. I talked to the associates, listened in the break room, sat in on department huddles, not as a distant director, but as someone who remembered what it felt like to clock in at 5:30 a.m. in steel-toe boots. I asked every team lead the same question. If you could bring one person back to this team, who would it be? The same names came up again and again. Thomas Alvarez, warehouse operations manager, 22 years with Broadline, knew that facility like the veins on his hands. Derek had restructured him out last year. Melissa Tran, customer service lead, a legend on the floor. Customers asked for her by name. She quit after being put on an impossible performance plan. Angela Figueroa, front desk administrator, the glue between teams. Her departure sent morale into a nosedive. They weren't just names. They were the culture. So I called each one. Thomas didn't even let me finish the sentence. "I'll be there Monday." Melissa cried. "You have no idea what that means to me." Angela, she just whispered, "Took you long enough, Cortez." Meanwhile, Derek was trying. To his credit, he showed up to every check-in. Clean reports. Updated plans. He asked more questions. He sat in more team meetings. But the damage he'd done wasn't something you fixed with a clipboard and a spreadsheet. "You've got a trust problem," I told him. "I know," he said quietly. I didn't think they hold on to that stuff." I raised an eyebrow. "When you treat people like they're disposable, they don't forget. They endure." He looked down. For the first time, it wasn't in shame. It was in recognition. As the weeks passed, the Fort Worth facility began to breathe again. You could feel it in the way the team greeted each other in the mornings. You could hear it in the laughter returning to the loading dock. You could see it in the metrics, shrinkage down, productivity up, absenteeism dropping fast. We didn't just bring people back. We brought belief back. I met with Thomas and asked if he considered taking a regional training role. He said no, then smiled. But I'll stay here. I've still got work to do. Melissa didn't just return to her desk. She became the go-to person for coaching new hires. She rewrote the onboarding manual herself. Angela set up monthly morale check-ins between departments, something we'd never even thought to do before. The culture wasn't just recovering. It was rising. One afternoon, I received a call from Elaine Watterson. "How's Fort Worth looking?" she asked. "Healthier," I said. "Not perfect, but the heart's beating again." She paused. "And Derek?" I didn't speak for a second. "He's trying. I won't pretend he didn't burn bridges, but he's showing up. And maybe that's the first step." "You're the right one for this, Daniel," she said. "We don't just need people who hit targets. We need people who fix what others broke and do it without bitterness." That stayed with me, because she was right. This job wasn't about proving Derek wrong. It was about proving that dignity and results don't have to be mutually exclusive. That leadership doesn't require a corner office. It requires integrity. And integrity doesn't shout. It walks. It works. It heals. It was the start of week 7 when Derek requested a private meeting. No email. No assistant scheduling it for him. He knocked on my office door himself. I looked up from the staffing forecast. "Got a minute?" he asked. I nodded. "Come in." He walked in slowly, his steps heavier than usual. In his hand was a sealed envelope. He sat down across from me, placed the envelope on the table, and slid it forward. "I'd like to submit my resignation," he said. "Effective immediately." I didn't say anything, just looked at the envelope, then at him. "I've been offered a role at a smaller firm," he continued. "They need help restructuring their warehousing operations. I think it's a better fit." I nodded slowly. "You sure about this?" He allowed a breath. "Yeah, I've made mistakes here I can't walk back. And this place doesn't need me anymore." I picked up the envelope. "You grew in these last few weeks, Derek. More than I expected. That counts." He looked up, surprised. "That's it? No lecture? No final jab?" I smiled gently. Growth isn't linear. Sometimes leaving is the best way to honor it. His shoulders relaxed. "Just a bit." "Thank you," he said, "for the opportunity to try." We shook hands. For the first time, it felt like two men, not roles. He walked out quietly. No scene, no memo, just closure. The next day, I asked Miguel from receiving to step into my office. He looked nervous, shirt tucked in too neatly, fingernails clean. Even his badge was polished. "You've been keeping this place running behind the scenes for a long time," I said. He gave a modest shrug. "Just doing my job, sir." "You've been doing more than that. You've been listening, coaching, calming storms before they start. That's leadership, Miguel. That's what Broadline needs." His eyes widened. "Me? General manager? On an interim basis?" I confirmed. "Let's see what you can do." He sat there stunned, then slowly nodded. "I won't let you down." I know. In the following weeks, everything changed, but not in loud, dramatic ways. In quiet, meaningful ones. Departments collaborated without tension. Senior staff mentored junior associates without fear of being pushed aside. Feedback flowed both ways. Even customers started noticing, leaving reviews not just about products, but about people. Fort Worth was healing. Not because I demanded it, because I enabled it, because I believed in it. One evening, as I sat in my Houston office overlooking the city's warm, amber lights, I thought back to the day I was fired. Derek thought he was cutting costs, but what he really did was cut loose a leader that this company needed at a bigger scale. He gave me the push I didn't know I needed. I never wanted revenge. I wanted responsibility. And now I had it. But more than that, I had clarity. Because in the end, the real story isn't that I became Derek's boss. It's that I became the kind of leader I had always hoped someone else would be. For me, for others, for everyone who ever felt like they were invisible. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt discarded, underestimated, or replaced, know this. You're not finished. Your value isn't measured by a title, a salary, or a spreadsheet. It's measured by how you show up, by how you lead, by how you rebuild, even when no one's watching. So if you believe in leadership with integrity, in standing tall after being knocked down. Backhand Index Pointing Right subscribe for more stories that honor real grit and quiet comebacks. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is becoming the kind of leader no one saw coming.